eventually makes a little pinhole leak back there. And it's going to spray back there, and you're not going to see it, you're not going to know it until it's dripped down through into the kitchen, your floors are starting to buckle up, and by then the water damage is done. And that's when you're calling us, because we'll come in and we'll take care of that. I would recommend that, well, I'll save my recommendations after we go through the tips or what the problems are. The next major one is the kitchen sink supply line. Mainly when your kitchen is out on an external wall, you have your plumbing that goes through there, and a lot of times, especially in the winter time, those pipes are notorious for freezing. But those will develop a leak or a drip, or some will start rotting your cabinet. You don't know because nobody ever checks under there because it's slammed full of cleaning stuff and whatever else can pile up under there. And the check valves or the cutoff valves leak really bad as well in there. So it's something we don't check very often, but it ends up becoming a big problem because eventually it just drips through, rots out the cabinet. Again, like the ice maker line, it goes through into the floor, starts buckling the floors. So that's something else we want to keep an eye on. And then the third major one is the dishwasher line. And like the refrigerator line, it runs through the cabinet to the dishwasher, and it's rubbing up on all kinds of things going on underneath it, to the side of it, inside the sink cabinet. And those things eventually get a hole in them, and it's got a lot of pressure on those lines, and those rupture. And it's notorious that this is going to happen when you leave for the house, going to Disney World or Charleston or Myrtle Beach, whatever, and you come home, and then that's when it's going to break, and you're going to have a house full of floods. We get them all the time. Some other areas I want to point out too: the washer machine supply line. It's usually that black rubber line. Those are notorious for leaking. They're really inexpensive and cheap, and they don't hold up well to the pressures. So that's something else you want to keep an eye on. The toilet supply line is another notorious one that leaks all the time. It's down tucked under there. Most people don't pay attention to it until it's become a big issue. And then the water heaters, Christy pointed out, is definitely notorious for rupturing, especially as they age, they rust inside, and then the metal breaks out. The pressure that's pushing in there blows them up, and then they start flooding. Either if it's up in the attic, they'll flood all the way down to the crawl space, or wherever it's located, it'll really flood a lot in there. And I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous up here. I wasn't expecting to talk to this many people tonight. So I would like to do a little demonstration. I want you guys to see exactly what some of the things that we do that kind of differentiates us from trying to handle it yourself. As Christy pointed out, you've got a couple inches of water and you think a couple of towels and shop vacs, it's just not going to cut it. You'll be there for hours, you'll be exhausted, you'll give up. So we wanted to demonstrate that we've got, about 30 gallons of water in here, roughly? And so we have our mitigation trucks parked on the side over here. We have a big water extraction machine that's inside there. It's designed for sucking this water out. You can suck it off of carpets, standing water. It's got a lot of pressure. So I'm going to let Dusty fire the machine up, and we're going to show you how quickly this sucks. Now, I want to hear some guesses. If you had a shop vac, how long do you think it would take to suck this much water up? Couple hours? Yeah, and that's after dumping the vacuum out a bunch of times and finding somewhere there. What is your guess it's going to take for us to suck this water out of here? 5 minutes? 3 seconds. Anything else? Anybody else? 2 minutes. All right. Well, I'm going to let you guys watch, and I encourage you to time it because it's very impressive if you see how quickly this water goes. Everybody timing, watching the clocks. We got one going over here. Where are we at so far? 22 seconds, all right. We're almost halfway through. Now as Dusty is working on that, I just want to kind of give you the image that if you go down in your basement, you find it flooded with a couple inches of water, we can suck water like that in a matter of 15, 20 minutes. We can get in there and extract most of that water. Now it gets a lot more in depth getting it to a dry point because sucking water doesn't just dry the structure. but it gets most of it out of there so we can get in there and start drying structure. Dusty's about a quarter of the way down. Hey, you got some inside information here. So 2 minutes now. All right, stop the clock. 2:15.
Wow.
So 2 minutes, 15 seconds versus a couple hours that you had mentioned earlier about how to take that. So that makes a big difference having the right equipment for losses like this. So it's really important. If you call us when that happens, we can come out and get that done very quickly and not drag out all night long. So our next display that we're going to do is for hardwood floors. Especially with the ice maker line, is it leaks through and you don't see it until it happens. That's when you start seeing it buckle up. If you call us early enough, we can get there and set up our floor drying mat system and actually attempt to save the floors without having to tear them up. So what Dustin's going to do is he's pouring water all over here. It's eventually absorbed through all the cracks and the grooves. And underneath the hardwood floors has got grooves in there. I've got a sample here that I wanted to pass around that you can see has got, the bottom side has got channels in there. A lot of people don't realize when that water gets through there, it starts going through those channels and they can start shooting off in different directions. So even though the floor's not buffed or it doesn't look wet, it doesn't mean that water's not there. So when we show up to evaluate it, we bring a flat meter like this. This is a water meter, and this enables us to locate the source of water and how far it is spread everywhere. So we'll assess it using this, and then we'll get up here and we'll put our floor drying mat system all over the hardwood. If you guys could get a little closer, this is really cool to see. When we put the mat on here and we start putting suction on it, it's going to suck this water very fast. And please feel free to come over here and come around this side. And this is you want to see it this way. You don't want to see it through your home.
You want to see when this mat goes on, you want to see the water bubbling up, and you really should move closer.
We won't bite you, we promise. At least not bite you hard.
Right here.
So you see how much water Dusty's poured on here. It's drying the top, so you would think that floor is dry because it's dry to the touch. But it's what you can't see is what you need us there for to use these machines. So watch, as soon as you get that on there, it starts sucking that water back up. And what we'll do is we'll cover the whole floor that's affected, so we can have dozens of these mats spread out every which way, whatever's needed to get to where all the water source is at. We'll let these things run here for a few days and just continue to pull that water out of there. But this system enables us to save hardwood floors, but if you wait too long, then the water's too damaged we can't repair at that point or save it. So if you find that you run into this experience, it's critical that you get us out there quickly to do so. But it's definitely impressive to watch how much water comes through there. So while that's working on finishing suck that up, I want to just go over a few tips on preparing for your vacation. So these are just some small, easy steps that you can take before you leave on vacation. My family and I are leaving for Disney World this Friday, so I've got a whole list of things I'm going to do Thursday night and Friday morning to shut down the house because I don't want to come home to a flooded home. How many people here know where your main water cutoff valve is at your house? 1, 2, wow. More than I expected. That's good. You should. You better know. So before you leave, if you have the ability to cut it off, you need to cut it off. If you don't know where it's at, I recommend you call a plumber. They can come out and show you where it's at. If it's a very difficult one to get to, I recommend having them install an easy accessible one. But just cutting it off the house, if something does rupture, it's just going to be what's in that line. It's not going to continue running and create tremendous amounts of damage. You want to drain the water lines and flush the toilets, especially in the wintertime. If you're going to be gone a good while, you want to get rid of that water out of there, especially if you're going to be gone a month or so, because you all know the water, what it does with the toilets, you can have a mess to clean up in there too. In the wintertime, you want to make sure you maintain heat. This is really important. A lot of people think that if you're gone for a few months, that you can just shut that heat off and just close the house up. Unless you truly winterize the house, which a lot of people don't think of, the pipes will freeze, I assure you. And most of the time, your insurance company will deny your claim because you did not maintain heat in the home. And that's usually required in this contract. But just turn it down so it's not running so much, but you do want to keep some heat going on in there. Summertime, air conditioning, that's another big one. If you're going to shut the house down, don't turn the air off in the summertime either, because it's going to get very hot and very humid in there, and you're going to end up with mold growing up in the house. And we'll be doing a mold remediation of the house, and we don't want to do that. So just, you can turn it to a right level. It's not running all the time, but you need that humidification in the home. It's very important. And then the last one on here, just have somebody come and check on the house, which probably most of us here have somebody that'll come and check on it, but we get a lot of phone calls from neighbors that their neighbor's front door has got water pouring out the front door, and we're running out there to the rescue. That's pretty much it. It's just kind of the basic things, the most important things you want to watch out and look for. Does anybody have any questions? Easy crowd. No questions?
So if you shut off the main water.
I'll get you right after Bill. I'm sorry.
You shut off the main water, and then things like the refrigerator are going to try and run, right? They're going to try and.
So if you're going to shut off the water, yes, you want to shut your ice maker line off, or the ice maker itself. It's usually just a switch in the freezer. That's a good point, Bill.
So there's a lot of shut-offs that you're going to do beyond just the main, right? I mean, water heater.
Yep. You can, as long as nobody's running anything in there, you're fine. Because as soon as you crack it, the pressure's off of it. It'll be fine. But you don't want to drain your water heater and leave it running. So it's okay to have it on, but at least cutting the main valve off will take the pressure off the system. That's a good question.
Is my main water valve down the road and I need a tool to turn that water?
There are most of the time, that is most people's cutoff is that little tool. It's a metal T-handle, and not all of us are capable of doing it, so it might be advisable to ask a neighbor or a friend or call a plumber. We'd be happy to come out and do it. It'd be a little expensive, but it's better than the alternative.
I have one of those. What do you call it?
We call it T-handle shut-offs. It's just, Lowe's sells them. They're about $10 or so, and it's just a metal T with two little U-shapes, and it goes over the thing. You just twist it, and that's it. Cuts it off.
So even if you're on county water or like a well, you still need to cut it off.
So county water would be that shut-off by the road. If you're on a well, most people just turn the breaker off to the pump, and that'll de-energize it. That's good. Another good question.
How do you feel about the waterless hot water heaters?
Those are awesome. I have one myself. You don't have to worry about it other than just cutting the pressure off again, coming into the place, but there's very little to have to do with those. Anybody else? Go ahead.
I have one. This is really informative because this is something that you never think is going to happen to you, and when it does, you're not prepared. You don't know who to call. There's a million in the phone book, and who can I trust? What can I do? What is the response time? Like if we were to call you, say, I came home from vacation, there's a problem.
Great question.
How
So
soon?
our company goal, typically we try to respond within an hour. Of course, it all depends on where you're at, how far out you are, and what type of things are going on. But we try to be on site within an hour is our goal. And the sooner you call us, the better. Don't wait a couple days to get around to doing it, because it's just going to cause more damage. You want to get us out there as quick as possible.
Can I add to that answer? Calling your insurance company,
And the insurance company tells them, send somebody, but I didn't know that if you deny that person or say, hey, you can choose the person you want.
That's another great question. That's exactly right.
The ice maker line, a rental house, didn't know it, the line of the ice maker had a leak, been leaking for a long time, some water damage. And we thought we had to use who the insurance company recommended, did not know that we could choose who we wanted
No, that's really good advice. If you do have to file a claim, you can use whoever you want and don't have to do what the insurance company says. You can say, hey, we've got a local contractor, American Restoration, we want them to do. We're on pretty much everybody's programs, so we're probably one of the preferred contractors already, but you're exactly right. You don't have to pick them. You can choose and hire whomever you like.
Can I add to your, I just want to add something to your question about the response time. So I do want, for people who own a business or own a building, we do have a program called an ERP, an emergency response program. And so a building owner or a business owner can sign up on this program. There's no charge. And what that does is it allows us to work with that customer to form their contingency plan, help them get all of their information in one spot. Then we go ahead and get a work authorization signed ahead of time. So if something happens, when they call us, because they're a part of the ERP program, they get put on the top of the rotation. So they're not at the bottom of the list waiting, they go on the next crew available, and so we're able to get out even faster. And then with the paperwork already signed, then we can get to work right away. And there's no obligation, so there's no fee for that. So if anyone's interested in that, I'd be happy to talk to them one-on-one. So, more questions?
Does anybody else have any more questions? Go ahead.
It's not really a question, but I own the insurance agency in Bessemer City, and just FYI, your homeowner's insurance does not pay for sewage backup, water sewage backup. When it backs up and comes in your house, less than $20 a year, you can add that coverage to your policy. So
Wow.
don't get caught without it.
That's a good point, Steve.
It smells. It
It's-
stinks.
And we clean it up all the
Yes,
time.
you do. Yes, you
We
do.
do, we're the guys.
Actually, they're the only people we call. We've used others, and I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Keith.
So Eric, are you just located in Shelby, or are there other areas if we want to
So-
share this with our relatives and friends that live around?
Great question. We're based here in Shelby. Mason's owned the company for 23 years now, I think. 24 years. We're a family-owned business, but we cover, a lot of people don't realize this, 14 counties. We go all the way out to Charlotte, we go up to Hickory, out towards Tryon, Rutherford, down to Spartanburg, Fort Mill, and everywhere in between there. Pretty much if we can get there within about an hour or so, we're out there. And, given the situation, we've gone a whole lot further now. We've gone up in the mountains before, down to Columbia, almost to Raleigh area. So, we're not just restricted to there if we're able to have the means to help out. Any more questions? I don't want to hold up the Greenbrooks time, so I'm going to pass it over to them if we don't have any more. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to pass it over to Christy, excuse me.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Has anyone else here used American Restoration before? Does anybody have anything anybody want to share anything about our services that yes?
So I was at your house hanging out, and this huge storm came through Cherryville and ripped the roof off my church. And by the time I was driving home from Christy's house, American Restoration was there covering the whole educational wing. So, thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to share anything?
We had a house fire, and they did great.
Good. Good, I'm sorry.
I should have another house fire, because it looks better after.
I'll take that as a testimony.
Don't tell the insurance guys.
Yeah, right? Yeah, right.
It happened to me too.
Rudy, did you have something else?
Yes, we personally had them come out as well. 2 months after we were open in 2015, yours truly was walking with the maids at the time. We were turning on water in there, and I turned one on, walked off. Next day, noticed that we had water coming from the 3rd floor to the 2nd floor. Called them out, they were out there, so they did a great job for us. They came out within, I think, an hour. You're about right, so. Yeah.
And Rudy's the general manager at Hampton Inn and Suites. Okay, good, thank you. So we do have some information here. If you want to grab some pens or magnets or brochures, we do have them on the island here, that beautiful island there. So please take some information before you leave. So I would like to introduce Brandon Fitzmaurice. Brandon Fitzmaurice has 16 years of experience doing a lot of stuff. Sorry. Specializing in the full spectrum of cabinetry, from design into implementation.
All
There you
right.
go. That's a good little segue.
How's that segue? So I asked him if he's had some water damage in their home. Well, Brandon has had some damage, and he has also used our services. So I'm going to pass the microphone over to him. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. So before I share with you a little bit about Greenbrook Design and go in a little further detail with who we are and what we do, tell you my story of needing American Restoration Services. So Eric flipped over the board and showed those nice little relief cuts on the bottom of the hardwood floors, and those guys act like straws to suck the water all the way across the house. And especially when you have a slow leak like my family did, it may take 3 or 4 days for the water to actually show itself. So there was a valve in our ice maker that went bad. Just a little valve, and water was dripping down the ice maker line, hitting the sheetrock wall, and since my refrigerator was built in like the cabinetry here, it was going down the sheetrock wall, hitting the subfloor, following the relief cuts on the hardwood floors and going out. It covered about 1,000 square foot before it actually showed itself on the surface. When we went into the crawl space, on the other hand, it looked like it was raining. So one morning, got up to let my dog out and walked in there, and just water was coming up through all the cracks. So immediately, I've known Mason and American Restoration for a long time from being in the industry. Picked up the phone, called them. They were there within an hour, or probably less. Put the mats down and pulled up all the water, and the mitigation team, I handled the construction end, so I didn't utilize them for that service, but the mitigation team was great, responded to my needs, as I would call them and ask, hey, how much longer does these machines need to run? Because we had like 4 dehumidifiers going and like 15 of those mats, and it was quite an experience, but they did a very thorough job, good customer service. Eric was at my beck and call for a week or so. If I needed him, he was there. So good customer service and attention to detail. That's what goes a long way in any business. And that's what we like to do at Greenbrook Design. So our business model here was that our custom cabinet company, Walker Woodworking, had grown to a point where we didn't know how to expand and how to grow. We had kind of 2 distinct paths we could go as a company. One was to build a big, huge manufacturing facility and try to sell cabinetry throughout the Southeast. And the other aspect was to open a home selection center where we could sell multiple products at multiple different value points. We've said it quite a few times, and it bears repeating. If you were to walk on the streets in Shelby a year ago and ask someone if they had ever heard of Walker Woodworking, they would generally say, yeah, they do great work and I can't afford them. So we decided to rebrand our new business as Greenbrook Design. It's a home selection center. We carry products that range in every price point and quality point. So whether it's cabinetry, countertops, tile, decorative light fixtures, decorative plumbing fixture, as well as a few home furnishings mixed in there, we can bring a client in and provide them with all those products and really work with you and partner with you as far as developing a budget for your home renovation project. There's a lot of misinformation on whether it's the internet or HGTV on what the expected timeline of a project would be, as well as the expected budget. You know, I had a customer in here today, said, I thought my kitchen remodel, I see on HGTV, they remodel a whole house and it's $20,000 and they do it in an hour. And I was like, well, that's not very realistic. So what we do is we have a very thorough process we go through with the clients. We'll go out to the house, take pictures of the space, talk to you, listen to what you want, what your desires are for the space, have you back out here. We do a live interactive design on our computer program, so you're actually seeing the proposed space and what we want to do with it. And then we give you multiple price points of all the different products that would be involved with that, as well as what we've seen historically over the last 4 or 5 years, some of the labor prices. Even though we may not be doing that specific labor, we do about 60 to 100 projects a year, varying from small, simple bathroom renovations to whole house remodels to new construction. So we have our finger on the pulse of what the labor rates are for general construction as well. So although we would not be doing the general construction and the labor aspect, we can help you get that knowledge to know what realistic budgets are for those different projects. If you have any questions about proposed projects, any ideas, we'd love to talk with you on that. Look around the showroom, look at all the different product we have. We'd love to show you the different cabinetry selections, tile selections, countertop selections, and we're glad to be here in Shelby and to bring something new to the table. Thank you for coming out. Enjoy, hang out, and I'm gonna hand it back over to Christy before we wrap up.
Thank you.
Before I pass it over to Jan to wrap up, for American Restoration, I want to introduce like the most important person at our company, and that's Mason Venable, who is like trying to hide so much that I almost didn't mention him, and that's like, I can't believe it. So that's Mason. And I don't think you would meet one person that works at American Restoration who doesn't say they love to work with him. So thank you for all you do. So I'm gonna pass it over to Jan to wrap up. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Christy. Okay, so did we all learn something that we didn't already know?